make this just another video this moment. Remember, I was in first grade or second grade. I had written a report for school about cryptozoology. I was a little kid, but I wrote a very quite a report, and brought it to the principal, and the principal wanted to have a conversation with me about it. And we got to the subject of aliens, and what the principal said was that, and I wasn't religious at the time, and not only that, but I was also not a particularly spiritual type of person in the supernatural spiritual sense, or in the out of this dimensional sense, out of this three dimensions that we exist in, or the four dimensions that we exist in. And so, I wasn't interested in anything that was in the realm of fantasy, like ghosts, vampires, werewolves, fairies, those types. Even fiction also didn't appeal to me. Science fiction that had a scientific explanation, that's what appealed to me very much. What I'm learning now, though, is that all of these things have a scientific approach. I mean, the fact of the matter is that the scientific angle, even a lot of these movies in the 50s, and even back in the 30s and 40s as well, would try, and talking in fiction, to ascribe something scientific to the supernatural. There would be an interface between science and the fantastic, beyond the standard science fiction approach. But that was hard for me. I mean, there was some obvious cases, just like, Katzman's The Werewolf is a prime example, 1957, which was a totally sci-fi werewolf. Meaning, when I say sci-fi, I mean that Frankenstein is essentially science fiction, because it's about a scientist who uses science to do something, even if it's scientifically implausible or impossible. It's essentially a science fiction story, as opposed to something like Dracula or the Wolfman, which would be more in the realm of horror that's linked into fantasy horror. Not meaning, of course, Frankenstein is a horror film, but it's a science fiction type of horror as opposed to supernatural horror. Werewolf of London goes into more the scientific aspect of it, as does really the Wolfman, essentially. very much a sci-fi purist in my cryptozoology, and as opposed to now where I'm also more open, perhaps due to the fact I'm religious, to the fantastic, to the supernatural, and even in things that would be assumed to be natural phenomenon like Sasquatch, Bigfoot, that we attribute certain supernatural qualities to it. But more than that is there's a little bit more to that, because as we've been learning, there's essentially a science behind all of these supernatural things. Meaning, science today doesn't understand it yet. But someday it'll get to the point where, and it's getting closer to that with quantum theory, with the multiverse theory, and so forth, with the multi-dimensional theories, to the understanding that there is a scientific explanation for things that would seem to us to be totally fantastic and magical and supernatural. They're actually totally within the realm of science, which is something that many traditional spiritual paths have taught throughout history. Meaning, I once read through bathroom reading a Buddhist catechism, that's what they called it, meaning similar to how the Catholics and many Protestants have a catechism of the statements of their faith. And really the closest thing we have to that traditionally is the Animaments, which some people even felt that was too much copying the other nations. I should have gotten gas here. It's a lot cheaper. Alright, should have waited. So, the idea behind this, though, is that there is essentially something. So, I was reading the Buddhist catechism that I came across. I'm not sure. It was like on Kindle or something. I'm not sure how much that's recognized, but it was interesting. At one point, they said, that it appears that certain spiritual masters perform miraculous feats, but they can all be explained through a rational scientific approach. And essentially, we can agree with that too. Meaning, it not saying that's necessarily what Judaism believes, but I'm also not saying that that's not what Judaism believes. Since we don't pontificate on matters that are really beyond the Gimel Ikrim, we have 13 basic principles that are the closest things we have to dogmas, and in Judaism, nothing else is dogmatic, for sure. Those 13 perhaps can be considered dogmatic in a certain sense, and even that is not totally 100% universal. Meaning, no one denies that Judaism believes these 13 principles. Are these 13 principles dogmas or not? Essentially, all the 13 don't fit into the categories of the other dogmas that are suggested by the various dogmatists, Ikrim, and so forth. So he has 3 Ikrim, but all the Gimel fit into all the 13 fit into the 3. So it's not really. There's nothing so strange about it. That being said, so where are we holding? What was I talking about? So, like I said, when I was a kid, I was very much a scientific and sci-fi purist to the best of my knowledge. I didn't understand science that well either, but I was a very arrogant kid. I'm still pretty arrogant, and but I was much more arrogant then. I'm agnostic or atheistic would say, well, that's a wonderful thing. Of course, I'm a religious person. A lot of religious people will say, well, that's fine as long as I'm the one who's proven right and everybody else is proven wrong. I think we're going to be surprised, though, that there is nothing in disclose. My feeling is like this: there will be nothing that will be disclosed in a natural disclosure, other than the coming of Mashiach. Should also be a type of a disclosure event. Isgalus, K'vei Shemayim, the revelation, the disclosure, the opening, the revealing of the glory of heaven. But until then, there's still layers of disclosure that are possible even without that. And I don't think any layer of disclosure that will be revealed will contradict any religion. And I mean any religion. Partially because we are needing to maintain free will. And so religion has to exist, and the multitudes of religion have to continue to exist, in a sense, to maintain free will to a certain extent. And so if false religion were proven false, it would undermine free will to a certain extent. And also, you know, there's a Mishnah in Avodah Zarah that discusses this, that a Greek philosopher asks one of the Tanaim, I don't remember which Tana it was, if your God hates idolatry so much, why doesn't he just destroy all the idols? And he said, well, people worship the sun and the moon, which we need to maintain life on earth. Should God destroy his world because of fools? So then the philosopher answered, well, so then why did God in his omnipotent power destroy just the unnecessary idols and leave the necessary ones? So the rabbi there, the Tana, answers, well, if that would happen, then the worshippers of the sun and the moon would say, oh, you see, we were right and they were wrong. Also, part of the thing is, I think it's pretty clear that many of the things that have been worshipped throughout history were not merely figments of the imagination, but rather actual beings who were not worthy of worship, but servants of God. Misinterpreted by fools, just like the Tana said. Tipshim, the fools, to worship these things that are not deserving of worship, but these things are still powerful and still part of God's creation for whatever reason God created them, but they're not gods that are meant to be worshipped, no more than the sun or the moon is. But the sun and the moon are very useful. We need them, and that's what it's all about. Now, the idea that we have here then is that I really don't believe. Now, to me, when I was, whatever, I don't know, 7 years old, I don't know, when we were discussing this, it didn't mean anything to me that religion doesn't, that religion will go away. I didn't really care. To me, now, as a religious person, well, if there's a falsehood in my religion, I'd like to be rid of it. I don't seek to preserve any sacred cows that don't need to be destroyed. Wait a second. Where am I going here? Oh no, I think I was supposed to turn there. Okay. So what are we talking about here? Where can I turn around here? So where do we find these answers? What do we?
In a quarter mile, continue straight onto River Road.
Oh, I guess this is right. I don't know. What does it say? Yeah, okay. Just say so.
Continue straight onto River Road.
Is this River Road? Yeah, okay. So
Continue on River Road for 7 miles.
So back to what we were saying, again, if there is something, I don't think any of the revealed truths of Torah are false, but I think is what's quite possible is that perhaps we have a wrong perspective on certain aspects. Like people who take Midrashim 100% literally is a mistake, but people who totally discount them is also a mistake. The truth is somewhere in between, I believe, although both are 100% kosher, because neither violates any basic dogmas of Judaism. Now, what are we looking for here? What's the problem here? Why is disclosure not happening? I mean, one of the most dogmatic religious groups, at least that's their reputation. It's become less and less so throughout time and over the years, is the Catholic Church. And the Catholic Church has no problem with disclosure. It seems like they're all ready for it. It seems that they've been involved in these things. They've had contact with extraterrestrials. There's the story of Papa Bueno. I remember one of the popes. He was only a pope for a very short time. Assumption is he was the powers that be wanted to get rid of him, but the story goes that he encountered a humanoid being that came down in a flying saucer, and he went and had a conversation with it privately, but some bishops somewhere were with him, and they had to stay behind. They weren't privy to that, and then when he was done, they walked back, and then the being got into the craft and left, and the Pope said to this fellow who was with him, the children of God are everywhere. And what does that mean exactly? The statement that the Vatican came out with about extraterrestrial life, also the children of God, which is telling. Meaning the same way we are, I would assume, or that they're angelic, although like the one Vatican theologian told Dr. Greer, said angels don't need flying saucers, but the thing is that just because they don't need them doesn't mean they don't have them, or maybe they are them, maybe the saucers themselves are a type of angelic those are the Ophanim. I would say maybe that's what I would conjecture. I don't know for sure, but the Ophanim are a type of angel. Sometimes we say Ophani HaKodesh. In the Nusach Sfard, Shabbos morning, it changes. I think the Ashkenaz says Srafim, Ophanim, Chayos HaKodesh, the Seraphim, the Ophanim, which are the wheels, and the Chayos HaKodesh, the holy living beings, and then the Nusach Sfard version says Srafim, Chayos, Ophanim HaKodesh. It would seem like HaKodesh applies to all three of these categories. But it's interesting that that's what we encounter in our liturgy, Jewish liturgy. So certainly, classical Jewish sources have discussed the plurality of worlds, the existence of beings on other planets, as well as other extraterrestrial intelligences, not necessarily biological life forms. Some are and some are not, and various categories that exist, and this we have in our traditions. Even the great rationalist Maimonides lists 10 different types of angels, one of which he describes, he calls humanoid, that are physical. And I was always taught in shul that those are alien, those are extraterrestrial life forms that are biological life forms. Whereas the other categories most likely were not physical. However, like we learned, they can manifest themselves physically. And what does the word extraterrestrial mean? It just means not from Earth. Some people call these beings hyperterrestrial or extra-dimensional. But the existence of ghosts and demons and angels and all kinds of various types of intelligence that are not earthly, and so it's not that far off, So to me, I don't think there's any religious tradition that would have to shut. I don't think there's one church, synagogue, temple, mosque, anything, house of worship in the world that would be forced to shut its doors just because disclosure took place. So now many ideas and dogmas might be interpreted in a new way in each religion in light of this knowledge. But I don't think the churches will close their doors. I don't think the clergy are going to lose their jobs. So then what's standing in the way of disclosure? Like Dr. Greer says, it's the military-industrial complex, and it's the oil interests and other energy interests that are really standing in the way, because like Dr. Greer says, and this is all conjecture as far as I'm concerned, I don't think this is absolutely true, but it's an interesting logical step that he takes there, because he's saying basically, if these things are real, then, like he said, why do we have to fill up our car with gas? Why do we have to heat our home with oil or propane or coal or wood or whatever it is? There's zero-point energy, there's free energy. I mean, there have been conspiracy theories about this all over. Most famously, we have Tesla, and that Tesla discovered all these things. Perhaps he was even in contact with certain extraterrestrial intelligences. We're at a loss on account of this. So we have a lot to talk about, and I think it's worthwhile to be open-minded to these things. And again, why that's what's had disclosure forever. We're fully aware of the existence of beings that are not of this earth. Whether now maybe not all of human beings, but we certainly are aware of things that are not recognized by mainstream science. And so these things are hiding in plain sight. We all know.
In a quarter mile, continue on to South Maple.
We all know. In every religion, certainly the Abrahamic religions, know that there are angels and demons. The Islamic and pre-Islamic Arabic culture gives us the jinn, which are, basically the same like our
Continue on South Maple for 3/4 of a mile.
Same like the demons that we have in the Jewish tradition, really. So there's a lot to talk about. I don't think we should jump to conclusions. And again, people love to blame religion. They want to blame religion for wars, when again it's the greed, the industrial complex that's giving us the wars. They want to blame religion for holding back science, and when the fact is it's quite the opposite. The science, if science was following the scientific method, it would be a different story. The powers that be in the scientific community, many aspects, not in everything, of course not, but in certain aspects are so utterly unscientific. If they see something that goes against their orthodoxy, they will discount it. And so, and why is that? Perhaps it goes back to the military industrial complex, but also the civilian industrial complex, the powers that be that don't want free energy for obvious reasons. They're out of jobs. Technology moves along, and the little guy can't defend himself when technology goes along. The toll collector has no answer why he lost his job. To the Easy Pass. He can't defend himself, but the multinational corporations, that I wouldn't put it past them that they'll kill people, as the conspiracy theories go, because they don't want to lose their power. But the power of, and again, people want to blame capitalism, but real free market capitalism, we wouldn't have this problem. It really is more of a fascistic idea that comes essentially from a left that is giving us this issue of these things that we're talking about here, that they're holding us back, meaning if we had true free market capitalism, these type of things would be unstoppable. We'd have them already, because the market demands them. But because of the over-regulation that the left has placed on us, we don't have access to this. We're
in 1,000 feet, continue on to Neversink Drive.
We're closed off from these truths. And I think also that's why the left loves to blame religion. Because really, revealed religion is going to...
Continue on Neversink Drive for 4 miles.
It's not that the religions are going to lose their power because of disclosure. It's the opposite. The civil industrial complex and military industrial complex will lose their power, and that's what they want, is power. really is that, meaning why don't the aliens just land on the lawn of the White House? Why don't they land in the middle of the Super Bowl, like I always like to say, And the thing is, because we're not ready for that. And I think if we embrace the ideals of revealed religion, the world will be ready for something like that. To be the step in our evolution. This is exactly what we're waiting for. But we're being held back because we're not ready yet. We have to overcome our own sins. I remember I don't think I'll talk about this, but that's how there are tzaddikim who have worked on themselves enough that they essentially are seeing these. They're already privy to this information. They already have disclosure. They already have the scholars. Maybe not the highest level, but they have a certain level. And so therefore, that being said, that's why, that's the goal of revealed religion. Essentially, every religion has, the only difference with Judaism is that we have a whole nation, the Dordea, the generation of knowledge, the generation of the desert, to look up to. But every religion and every even spiritual movement within religions will have an individual who him or herself was worthy to a revelation, and followers who are not worthy to it, but should be trained to be worthy to such things. And in some cases there are stories where groups were, but the greatest story, of course, is Sinai, where everybody was, the whole nation was. That's how we know that one is really true. But that's what we're celebrating the truest. But the purpose of this revealed religion is to get back to that, meaning the temple, the Ark of the Covenant, all of this is to bring us back to Sinai, to remind us why do we do all this, meaning even before you can understand what you have to do, we have to understand why do you have to do it. And so many people don't understand that, but when we recognize what happened at Sinai and how irrefutable that is, how that's the greatest apologetic argument in history, and all these things were going on there, the angels and the Merkavas and all these things were there at Sinai. It was truly an event that there was a scholar.
In a quarter mile, turn right onto US 209 North.
There was this experience that was a disclosure event at that time, and ever since then, the Yetzer Hara has been trying.
Turn right onto US 209 North.
To put an end to it. So, thank you for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe. And let's be strong. Chazak v'yamatz. Be strong and of good courage. And don't let the powers that be that are trying to shut us up. Even if it means we have to be martyred for their cause. Hopefully we don't want such a thing, but it seems like there is, that, and I think even that's really what anti-Semitism is all about, is they want to shut us up. They don't want the world to know this great truth, and that's why